Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, guys, based on the time zones you all are coming from. So, my name is Neeraj Kheria. So, now let's get started. Now, the main motive of this entire session is first of all, we will be discussing on the advanced Java today. Then we'll be discussing on the J2E and JDBC principles. What exactly is Java database connectors? And again, what exactly are its fundamentals? How we can create the application? What exactly are different types of JDBC available? And what are different connections available inside it? And what are the statements present inside JDBC? Right, so now let's get started. So first of all, let's discuss on the advanced Java here. Now, Java, as we know, is the driving technology for every kind of device that we can think of, right? So all the major platforms, all the devices, they all are running on top of Java, right? And Java is, again, all the frameworks that we can think of, all the frameworks have been derived out of Java, where Java is the main driving technology for web and enterprise applications. So if we have single page applications, if we have dashboards, again, these all are designed on top of Java, right? So again, it is also driving all these client and server architecture based solutions, right? All the Java all the programming languages, they all are evolving around from Java itself, right? Along with, like, we have multiple serverlets console, like we have serverlets, we have web JSPs, JDBCs, these all are coming up and making sure that we have a better architecture, we have a better implementation of Java technology among different platforms and different use cases, right? And that will be exactly what we'll be discussing in today's session. Now, first of all, let's understand on JDBC, J2E, and J2ME. Now, J2SE refers to standard edition. Now, this is basically useful for design whenever we are designing any kind of web dashboards. Whenever we are designing the desktop, not exactly web dashboards here, but again, if we are designing the desktop applications, mostly like we have form based, right? We have forms, the codes, or the base APIs, and this is basically used in those use cases, right? And that's why we design multiple client side stone application itself. And then we have J2SE. So earlier we had J2EE, where we had the standard edition, right? Then came J2EE. EE refers to the enterprise edition, where we can create applications which can run on servers, right? For example, we have websites, right? And this exactly includes serverlets. We have server pages, we have Java server pages. So these all things, they include multiple enterprise editions. And again, because then these are all running on servers, right? And the concepts of serverlets, the concept of server pages, and the server phases that we'll be focusing on as we move further, right? Then came the ME, then came the Java 2 ME. So it runs on resources constrained devices. For example, we have cell phones, we have games. Now, we may have seen there are multiple games built on top of Java, right? We have multiple applications running on top of Java. Like earlier application, we had the calendar, we had the to-do applications, we had the calculators, right? So again, these all are the small scale devices, right? We have multiple games coming up. These all are designed on top of Java 2 Micro ME, known as the Micro Edition, because again, they are kept as a lightweight version, because again, we don't want to make the applications heavyweight, especially when they are made for mobile devices. Like we have now, because we know that they are limited on top of storage, they are limited on the memory, they are limited on the number of cores that we can say dedicated to those different devices out there, right? And that's why we have Java 2 Micro Edition. So we have J2 SE as a standard, EE as enterprise, and then we have ME as Micro Edition for Java 2. Now let's discuss on the J2E, as in Java Enterprise Edition. So now Enterprise Edition is basically a platform independent, right? So again, so when we are designing any enterprise And when we are using the enterprise edition, we are not limited. We are not limited to any particular. We are not attached to any environment, and that's why we have multiple dependencies files already attached to the application that is created as a part of enterprise edition, right? And that's why it is basically used for deploying the web-based applications online. Because again, when we are designing something for web-based, we are not limiting ourselves to any specific environment here, right? So we don't create the applications that could run only on one specific device or platforms, right? We create that for everyone, right? And that's why companies use Java 2 EE because of its because of its simplicity, right? Because again, it can simplify the complexity of building NT applications. When we have applications divided among multiple levels, right? And again, it can simply standardize an API components and application server container, and all the application, the entire application server and container can provide the framework services. And that's exactly why we use the Java 2 Enterprise Edition. Now we'll be covering these in the real world use cases once we are done with the topic here, guys, step by step, all right? Then first of all, let's also understand the concept of JDBC as well. So JDBC is simply a standard API, right? So JDBC, or we known as the Java Database Connectors, right? So JDBC refers to Java Database Connectors. So basically it works like a standard API for database independent connectivity between Java and the wide range of databases. So for example, here we can use it to set up a connection, create the SQL, and again execute the queries, and then we can view the output of those queries as a part of JDBC, right? Again, it can be connected to the Sysbase, to MySQL, to Oracle, to different databases. And again, what exactly we need to connect the application to the database, we need a simple JDBC driver for that, right? We simply need a JDBC driver, which can help us in connecting our Java application with the different database engines in which we want to store, we want to write, or we want to read the data from. That is the main use case of JDBC. And these are the common syntaxes that we'll be focusing on how we can connect a JDBC driver with the database. Now for creating a database, this is a common syntax that we use. We simply have to specify the SQL, create database, and in here we can simply specify the database name with which we want the database to be created, right? That's why we can perform all the CRUD operations by using the JDBC as well. We can, if we want to drop any particular database, again same, we have the SQL, drop database, and the database name. Now this needs to be now first of all, we do need to create this one. This needs to be created, this needs to be present, and then when we say drop, we are simply deleting that particular table altogether, just like we have in SQL, right? For deleting a table here, for deleting the database, we simply drop it, correct? And again, in that particular database, if we want to create particular table, then same way like we run these SQL commands, we have create table, then we can specify table name, the column data type. For example, here we can specify create table, then suppose table is employee underscore details, right? And the first name is suppose employee underscore name. Then we have varchar, suppose column data type is varchar, right? And again, suppose next is we have another column as employee ID, and this one is going to be an integer, right? So again, same way we create that in SQL, we can specify that as a part of JDBC SQL syntax, right? And same way, if you want to drop any table, we have SQL drop table and the table name. If you want to insert any data, we have insert into table name. So there's no difference here as compared to if in context to running a normal SQL query as a part of JDBC. So whatever query we have on SQL for performing all the CRUD operations, we have the same syntaxes for others as well. We have the same syntax as for others. And these are the different steps that we have to take when we want to create the JDBC application. So first of all, we do have to import all the packages. Then we have to register the driver and open connection. Then we have to execute a query, whatever query that we want to perform. And then we can perform and extract the data from the result sets. And then we can continue to start manipulating it. And once we are done, we can simply end up by cleaning the entire environment. Now for doing that, first of all, let's set up our entire let's do one thing. Let's set up a simple XAMPP server so that we can first of all create the database, and again how we can start manipulating on top of it, right? In case we have never used these, again these are basically used for creating the environments. So basically if we want to set, if we are developing any applications on PHP, on MySQL, or suppose we want to have the entire environment created, right? We want to run and deploy all the services locally into our system, then we can use these services, right? So if we are using Windows, we can download and install XAMPP, or if we are using, again if we are using Mac, then we have XAMPP for that. If we are using Windows, then same way we have other alternatives as well, called as WAMP servers. So we can use both depending upon the ease of use. WAMP is, we can say, a bit easier to use as compared to XAMPP. But again, WAMP is only available for Windows as of now. It is not available for Mac systems, right? But again, XAMPP can run on both, or is available for Mac as well as for Windows-based environments. We can use it for both. So let's just check if we do have the installation for XAMPP, or we have removed that. So I think we had it removed, so no problem. Let's reset it up. It will take a minute. So in the meantime, we can also go ahead and set this up at our own end, guys, so that we can create and start manipulating database on top of it. So the main reason we are setting this up is because again we just want to showcase what exactly is this SQL query that we need to run here, so that we can all be comfortable, we can all get comfortable in it, right? And just like we have seen here, again there are multiple online IDEs available as well, through which we can quickly run the SQL commands as well, as exactly as per our requirements and setup. We can go ahead and do that. So for example, let me show you how exactly the SQL query commands works here. So that we have discussed currently on the SQL, right? So basically, if we are trying to run any particular database here, right? Or suppose if we are trying to create the tables, then what we do for creating tables, what exactly we do? We can simply keep it as any table name. We can define this as any table name here. For example, we are creating the table name here as create table. Suppose here we are creating table for employee details. We can simply specify the name of that particular table that we are creating, right? And then we can start adding values inside it. For example, suppose let's say first of all we are simply defining employee ID, right? And then we can define, suppose we want the employee ID to be integer, right? And again, suppose we don't want this to have a not null value. That means we don't want this one to contain a blank value itself, right? Then we can define not null. Suppose here we are defining the employee name as well. Again, suppose this can be employee name. And again, we want this in the varchar character. And again, then we can specify the value as in 255 characters, right? Same way we want to define the employee, suppose employee suppose department. Let's say here we are defining employee department, right? Again, we want this to be a varchar. Again, we can specify the index value for it, right? And same way if we want, again suppose let's say same way if we want to specify any primary key, like we do in SQL, we can simply specify primary key, and then we can specify which key we want to be used as a primary key. We want, suppose employee ID to be used as a primary key here. Then we can specify the employee ID. Let's keep it as EMP to just have a common use case. And then that's how we can simply go ahead and create the table here, and this what this will do, this will simply go ahead and complete the table creation that we have specified here, Now these online IDs are generally slower here. So again, once the entire script has been executed, the entire table will be created, and then we can start adding values inside it. We can simply start adding values inside it. For example, let's say once the table has been created, here, and then we can start adding values inside it. Once the table has been created, then we can start adding values inside it. So one thing, let's use the editor for W3 School itself, as it is a bit faster. And same way, once we have the table created, we can start inserting values inside it. Right? For example, suppose if we already have these tables created, like we have in order details orders, right? We want to insert values inside it. We can simply use insert into. Suppose if we want to insert into employees, this is the table name that we are currently seeing here, right? So by default, if you open up employees here, we can see the listing for these 3 employees, right? We want to add details here. We have insert into, and then we can specify we want to insert into which one. We want to insert into employees. Right? And what exactly we want to insert in, that we have to specify here. We want to insert into employees. First of all, we have employee ID. We have under employee ID, we want to change what? We want to insert the last name, and because again these are the columns here, and again suppose here we want to insert first name, and then we want to insert the birth date as well, and then we want to insert photo, and then we insert notes. Once we specify this, then we have to specify the values. That means what is the value that we are trying to enter in these different columns that we have specified. And again, the value here should be in the same order that we have specified. It should be in the same order that we have specified here. Right? So first of all, we have specified employee ID, right? That's why suppose we want to enter the 4th value here. Same way, if we want to insert the last name, again we can specify, suppose registrant, right? Again, we can specify the first name as Edureka. Then we can have the birth date as, suppose today itself. Suppose today is 17/12. Okay, this is in the date format, so here it will be 12/17, and let's specify this as 2019 itself. And last is we can have SQL sample. We can specify that, and again that's how we can insert into values here. So once we have, so that's how we can perform a simple CRUD operations on top of any particular table that we have or that we will be creating as a part of entire hands-on. All right, so now let's move further. Now let's understand the different JDBC driver tags that is available as a part of the entire JDBC. So JDBC, as we had discussed, is basically used for establishing connection to any particular database that we had discussed. Now, first of all, we have JDBC, ODBC bridge drivers, right? So basically, this is basically used for getting connected. If we have any particular database from, suppose if we have database running on top of MySQL or Microsoft SQL Server of MongoDB or Oracle database, right? So first of all, we have now here we have the entire Java application, right? So where we have JDBC and then we have ODBC drivers both available, right? Again, then what exactly they do is they simply use the database vendors for getting connected to any particular database engine that we have, any particular database engine that we have here as a part of JDBC, ODBC driver altogether. Then next layer is the native APIs. So now basically native APIs helps in getting connected. Suppose if you are developing, if you want to maintain a connection here, right? So first of all, as we had discussed here, the JDBC's drivers are simply used for getting connected, right? And then we have the native APIs through which we can set up the bridge between the database and again our own application, right? Suppose if we have any third-party applications, if we are fetching data from, suppose from social media or from other databases, right? That we may have seen that whenever we are creating any login-based systems, again, we can create the APIs and then we can use that API to connect the application database with our own as application that we are currently running on, that we are currently creating on top of Java, right? So that's why we have the multiple native APIs for getting connected to different database engines. And then we have not pure. So again, basically when we are running applications here, right? Then we can instead of directly using our own JDBC, we are simply using a middleware for that, right? Where we can have multiple subtypes of these middlewares. And at last, we have 100% pure Java, where we're using our own JDBC drivers, where without the use of any particular third-party connectors or any particular API. That means suppose if we have a local databases. So basically, this is applicable only when we have our own local database. We have a complete authority or complete control of the database that we are currently creating, right? Suppose if this is our own local application in which we are trying to store the data, then we can use this 100% pure Java, where we are not dependent upon any external APIs and we have our own connection. That means the same XAMPP server that we have currently created, right? So in here we can create our own database, and if we are creating our own Java application on top of it, we can connect that Java application with our local storage or local databases as a part of 100% pure Java. Now let's see how the basic connections for JDBC are set up, right? So basically when we are setting up the JDBC package, now where we can start by specifying we have to import the SQL and the math libraries, right? So we have to specify import java.sql for fetching all the JDBC programs, and then we have to import java.math for all the big decimal programs we want to integrate into our Java application environment, right? Next, after importing these packages, then we have to register JDBC drivers as well, right? So for example, here we can use the try and catch statements. So first of all, we can define the try for name oracle.jdbc driver.oracle driver, and same way for and then we can simply catch it as the not exception. We can define the exception here as a not found exception, and then we can simply print the error in case there are some exceptions handled here. And the second approach for doing the same thing is we can again use the same try and catch statements, where we can create a new driver by simply specifying driver my driver, and again in here we can simply specify oracle.jdbc driver.oracle driver, where we can register the driver manager, and then we can simply catch the face as again same class not found exception unable to load driver class. So these are two different methods through which we can register a JDBC driver here, right? That will be focusing on. Don't worry about this part. We'll be focusing on executing this as we continue further step by step, right? And then we have the URL information. Now, in terms of the URL information, first of all, we have to define the get. Now we have to use get connection, and then we have to specify the string URL, string user, and the password. Now, whenever we have any particular database created, we do get a string URL. That means we do have a database URL with us. We also get a user. That means every database will be having its own user and the password That means these are the credentials that we need in order to connect to any particular database, right? And now, as you know, in RDBMS simply refers to Relational Database Management Systems. So in RDBMS, we can have multiple database engines. Like we have MySQL, we have Sysbase, we have DB2, Oracle. We can have the MySQL server, right? So basically, now these are the drivers name we have for MySQL. It is mysql.jdbc driver, and this is the default URL. JDBC, MySQL, and the host name, and then we have database name. Same way for Cbase, same way for DB2, for Oracle. These are the common URLs here, right? Now, for example, let's suppose if we have deployed any particular database on top of cloud computing platform as well. For example, let me showcase you a small example here. Because whenever we create any particular database, we do get the port, we do get the database URL, and we do get the credentials of that particular database that we have created. Let me showcase you a small use case here. Let's log into our console. So again, AWS is also a really good platform for cloud computing. It's not just really good, it is the #1 platform. It is the platform having the biggest market share in terms of cloud computing, followed by Microsoft Azure. So currently, all AWS has more than 33% market share globally, followed by Microsoft Azure, and then GCP having market share of around 13 to 12% individually. So again, if we have multiple databases created here, for example, we have RES. So whenever we create any particular, the main reason why we have logged in here is to showcase you how exactly the credentials are created for any particular database here. We don't have any instance created. If we would have, I would have shown you. So whenever we create any particular database here, we do, suppose let's say we are building a database on top of MySQL, right? And then we can choose. Now, in here, we have to specify the database name here. We do have to specify the username, the password, which we will use to try to connect to that particular database, right? Because again, we don't know why we need to have a secure username and password, because we don't want to give the access to that database to anyone, right? So anyone having the credentials, anyone having the right credentials, they will be the one who will be getting the access here, right? And that's exactly what we have as a part of database URL information. So again, if we don't have this one correctly specified, then we won't be able to connect to this particular or any database that we are trying to connect to using JDBC. Then we have create connection object. So that's how we have specified here. We have to create now using a database URL with username and password, right? Again, we can simply only use any database URL in case of an open database. And then once we are done, we have to simply close the connection using connection.close. And that's why in JDBC we have statements, we have prepared statements, we have callable statements specified as a part of JDBC. So now let's do one thing. Let's go back to our IDE so that we can see for ourselves how to execute these in different statements here. So let's open up our IntelliJ for getting started. So let's create a new project. Now we can use any ID, guys. We can use Eclipse, we can use IntelliJ as per a requirement, as per a comfort level. We can use any of the given IDs. We can use any of these. Edureka files. We already have couple other Edureka already in line. So let's create one new project here. Let it open up. Now, the main purpose of using this will be to see how exactly we can go ahead and create tables here and how we can specify that. Now, let's do one thing. First of all, let's go ahead and create one different package here. So now let's do that. So here we can specify the package. And under package, let's do one thing. Let's go ahead and create one new class. Let's name the class as here we have the SQL example, a class that we have currently created here. And then, first of all, as we have discussed here, first of all, we do have to import multiple libraries, right? We do have to import multiple libraries here. So let's import Java.SQL, and we want to export all the libraries here. And then we have to specify Java.SQL driver manager .SQL driver manager as well. And now once we have imported these two libraries here, now next is we have to define the same string here, right? So let's maximize this again. Now here we can specify static final, and then we can specify string value here. So in string we can specify the JDBC driver, and in here we have to specify the JDBC driver itself, that is com.mysql JDBC driver, and then again static final. So now then we have to specify this final string, right? So again here we can define final string, and then we have to specify the URL of the database that we have currently created here, right? Suppose if this had been running on top of the cloud computing platform, then this would have been a URL for that particular database as well. Or if we have created one local database, then that's how we have specified, that's how we have used the XAMPP server, right? So for example, using XAMPP server locally, we had created one database here, then we can specify the database here. So here we can specify JDBC, and then we can specify that this database is running on MySQL, and then we can specify the link here, and that is localhost, and then we have the database created for employee. Now this can be any database that we have specified here. This can be any particular database here, right? And then we have to specify the database credential. For example, here we can mention this as database credentials, and then we can specify static final string as in the user that we have used for this particular database. Suppose the username has been Edureka, right? Then this will be Edureka, and then again we have to specify static final string as the password, right? So here we have to specify the password as well. So what is the password? Or suppose if there is no password attached to this database, we can keep it to blank. And then we can start creating public static void main. Now, once we have specified that, now let's define the connection as well that we had defined earlier. So now here we have under connection, we can define connection. So under connection here, we can define connection. Suppose let's keep it null for now. And under again, same way we have statement. Let's keep both connection and statement null for now. And then we can specify try that we have that for first of all, we have seen this part earlier, right? We'll see first of all as a second step here. Now what we have step 2, right? So suppose, or we can say just to avoid confusion here, what we are doing, we are simply registering JDBC driver altogether, right? And for that here we have to specify class for name, and then we can specify the connection here, right? And that is, suppose we have com.mysql.ci.jdbc driver, right? And then we have seen how we have to open a connection. So yeah, here we can simply use system.out.println, and now we can showcase the user a simple message, right? Suppose if the connection is getting through, we can simply connect into DB, right? This we can showcase this message here. And again, under connection, here we can simply use driver manager dot get connection, and then we can specify the database URL that we have specified earlier, that we have the database URL here. That means this URL here, correct? And then we have to define the credentials, that is the username, that is Edureka, right? And then we have to specify the password as well, right? So that's how we can set up the JDBC driver, and then that's how we can set up the connection, correct? So this is exactly what we had discussed here, guys. So we have seen how we can set up the connection here. Next is we can start executing query as well. So here we can execute query, right? So again, we can system.out.println. Suppose here we can specify suppose creating statement. It can be anything. And here again we can set up the connection. We can again, now if we are simply okay, we have already set up the connection. Okay, not just connection here, we have to specify the statement here, the same statement that we have specified here, right, as stmt, right? And again we can set up the connection as in connection for creating the statement, and then we can specify the string value for SQL. And under SQL, we can suppose that we want to run a SQL command here, right? Then we can simply specify whatever SQL command we want to execute here, right? For example, we want to show the list of tables, so that we can simply use select. We can use select. Suppose if we have multiple individual columns created, for example, we have ID, we have first name, right? We have last name, and then we have the city, right? So suppose if we have these kind of columns in the table that we have in the database table that we have currently created, right? Then we can simply define the SQL command that we want to be executed, right? We can specify that, and then we can specify the result set, right? Suppose we want to call this as RS, and then we can save this in statement as execute query. And again, which query has to be executed? SQL, that we can specify here as SQL here, right? And at last we have extract data from result set that we have currently created, right? So now once we have the SQL statement executed here, then we can try extracting data from that given result set, right? So for doing that, so first of all, are we clear till this part? And how to register JDBC driver, how to open a connection, how we have executed a simply query. Now let's see how we can extract data from result set. So here we can simply use while. Now result set is RS that we have specified, right? And then we can specify the next. Now under next we can specify which particular result set we are looking for, right? So suppose let's say we want to retrieve any given row or column name, right? So suppose column name here, right? We can specify the integer, because again while creating the database, we have specified the ID as integer, ID as integer itself, right? So here, if we have ID, again from the results set, we can get integer, and then we can specify the index value for ID altogether, right? Same way here we can define for age. Again, we can specify the RS value, get integer, and then we can specify age, right? Same ways. Okay, we don't have any age here. We do have, suppose let's say we want to find city. Let's say we want to find city here. And then we have string first. Then we want to find get string as the first name, because this is what we have to specify here as first name, right? Again, if you have string last, then again same from rs, get string, we can define the value as last name, because this is a column name that we have specified here, right? Just to avoid confusion, let's keep it the same as well, just to avoid confusion. And at last, if you want the value to be displayed, if you want the values to be displayed as well, we can simply use system.out.println. So now here we can specify, suppose first of all, we are simply showcasing ID as ID. Then what should be the ID? We can simply specify the ID should be this one that we have fetched here. Same way, system.out.println. Here we can specify what is a city, and then we can specify city. That will be printed. So that's how we can start manipulating, and that's how we can start displaying and executing the value as a part of JDBC in entire code here. And at last, we do have to close the connection as well. Suppose we want to close the connection. Let's close connection. I think we did not close it. So here we have to close the connection for RS. Let's close the connection for statement as well. Statement.close. And at last, let's close the connection for connection itself. So that's how we can get started on the entire discussion on JDBC that we have discussed so far in today's session here, guys. Thank you so much for joining, guys, and have a great day ahead. Take care. Bye-bye.